I've said this on stage before that Sam Altman is wrong, that we're not entering an intelligence age, despite him having the best AI, unlimited resources, all this best PR. He's wrong. It sounds like bad rebranded information age, lacking a lot of creativity. And who would agree with me? It's Einstein. He said, "What is more important than knowledge?" And that is imagination. And the quote further goes down to say, knowledge is everything that has been, and imagination is all that is and will come to be. So there's a very future-looking aspect to imagination. Like any invention first starts as imagination. And even intelligence, that's something based on what exists or that comes from the imagination. So in my mind, we're not entering the intelligence age and all that's bad, that we don't like. And we're sitting on so much data, but what's the wisdom? What do we want to actually optimize and bring forward in the imagination age? And what doesn't serve us anymore that we can leave in the information age?
Helen Todd, welcome to the Augmented Life.
Thank you for having me, Michael. Very excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation today.
Same. I'm really excited to have you on because I feel like I've been in the pursuit with the Augmented Life of learning about ways in which people have been augmenting their lives and their capabilities with cutting edge wearables and technology to perform better. Often we're talking in terms of problem solving, in terms of I don't know how to put this, like quantitative achievement.
Mhm.
And I've seen your work is exploring this entirely different domain of human flourishing. You've talked about the transition from the information age to the imagination age. Certainly, one of the things we humans want to fill our time and capabilities with is creation. Sometimes just artistic creation in the pursuit of itself. And that's such an amazing frontier, I think, to explore. So I'm happy to get into it with you.
Well, I guess to dive into just the imagination age and this topic about augmented life, I've said this on stage before that Sam Altman is wrong, that we're not entering an intelligence age, despite him having the best AI, unlimited resources, all this best PR. He's wrong. It sounds like a bad rebranded information age, lacking a lot of creativity. And who would agree with me? It's Einstein, because what did Einstein say? He said, "What is more important than knowledge?" And that is imagination. And the quote further goes down to say, for knowledge is everything that has been, and imagination is all that is and will come to be. So there's a very future looking aspect to imagination. Like any invention first starts as imagination. And even intelligence, that's something based on what exists or that comes from the imagination. So in my mind, we're not entering the intelligence age. And all that's bad, that we don't like. And we're sitting on so much data, but what's the wisdom? What do we want to actually optimize and bring forward in the imagination age? And what doesn't serve us anymore that we can leave in the information age?
Right. Ooh, I like that because I I think that wisdom is, I guess this is an ancient insight, kind of an old Buddhist insight, that wisdom is a prerequisite of compassion. Like if you want to help people, good intentions are not good enough. You also need essentially cognitive enhancement, right? You need wisdom to connect with people and be meaningfully helpful.
I think just being a good human. Being a good human is is a good start to that too.
Yeah, right. Well, we're all in this together, right? So I think that to a certain extent, the pursuit of human flourishing, the pursuit of any problem solving at all, is measured in its positive impact on other people. You know, we're not trying to make the rocks happy.
Well, one thing I know, your company is all about data and, the bringing it all together and aggregation of it. In a lot of ways, I think we almost measure too much. Like you say measure the impact, but so much of the benefits, of human flourishing is it's not that it's subjective, but it's hard to measure. Like, what do the LLMs have the hardest time with? Like, words like love and these subjective things that mean so much, and how do you measure love? That's or, like, happiness, like, Bhutan has the happiness index, but this is something that's more, I think, just an embodied felt experience. And
Right.
one thing going back to Einstein, um, is, he has the famous E equals MC squared. And if you look later in his life, one of my favorite quotes from him is a letter of condolence, saying that, it's we're in this trapped prison and we must free ourselves to encompass all of consciousness and all of beauty in the world. I think the information age has that equal and tries to measure every single little thing, and the scientific method gave it this to break it down to all these tiny things. How are we looking at the holistic human and the lived embodied spirit in my body felt? I think we look so outside of ourselves so much to tell us how we slept, how we feel, da 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 da, versus actually like we say we're distracted, I'm out of my body, I'm out of sorts. Like, I think the impetus for human flourishing is actually a little bit more spiritual in the sense of, is our spirit in our bodies and do we have an embodied self that we're moving through the world? And I love the data to enhance, but if we look at the data first, then I think we're really taking agency out of ourselves and only looking to external.
Well, the so much of our experience of reality turns on what we give our attention to in the first place. There's this almost architectural choice making, and I think some people have a great sense of agency about that. And many of the people around me seem to have no sense of agency about their attention whatsoever. Like the reality is just happening at them.
Yeah. Well, what's the biggest metric of the information age? It's attention.
That's right.
And literally the paper that started the LLM, ChatGPT boom was, based on the transformer, and that article was called "All You Need Is Attention," as a homage to "All You Need Is Love." But, I would say a new I have reframes for everything. Instead of attention, I want your intention. What are you doing with my data? Why are social media, optimizing for attention? That's where we're gotten today with hyperpolarization, teen loneliness, and all of these things. So I have a lot of notes on the information age.
Nice, nice. The um I think well, so taking on that challenge, um, if we want to live a meaningful life full of human flourishing, I think that there is a dimension of lifestyle design that we can call intentionality. But the setting good intentions is itself not just difficult, it's something that doesn't happen outside of life. Like, it's not like we it's not like we go outside of ourselves and we're like, "What do we want out of life?" We make a bunch of decisions and then we check back in. We're like, "Okay, now I'm gonna get back in the car and I'm gonna go, like, fulfill these intentions." It seems to me like many of the things I thought were important turned out to not be very important. And it seems like I also am discovering even today, things that I had previously been neglecting that turn out to be extremely important. So So even this process of the pursuit of intentionality needs to be open to revision and learning. How do you how do you approach that kind of, let's call it, iterative process in your pursuit of a high intention life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd look at it, I guess, um, different stages, for lack of a better word. That's not the right word, but there's the individual, and then the family, the community, and goes up to the societal level and stuff. And especially when we're talking about human will, like, there's only so much that one little person can do versus the top AI and the top, social media engineers that are sitting on billions of data that know how to manipulate you to sell ads, So I'm very, like, yes, there's a lot of personal practices, and I'll share some of those, but it's if it's you versus, Facebook, you're gonna lose every time, because it's not you versus, it's you versus the best tech in the world designed to manipulate you. So, I think from a societal level, like, what's our collective dream? What's our collective intentions? Like, there's this race for AI, but where are we racing off to? Like, what's the objective? We hear about all this abundance, but to me, it sounds more like trickle down abundance, and no actual vision of how we're all going to prosper, except for the top 1% that, I know this is filmed 3 weeks ago, but, uh, our billionaires just got 300 and something $1 billion more richer just the other day. Um, do you feel better about this and all this abundance and all this AI? And all we talk about is, AI replacing our jobs and preparing for universal basic income. That doesn't sound like abundant thinking to me. Does it to you? No. Um, but okay, back to your question. On the personal intentionality, for me personally, in my own experience, um, I do a lot of personal development work, whether it's working with coaches, taking courses, reading books, and doing all these things. And I think that has made a really big difference in my own life and just getting clear, and that's it's always a work in progress, but, I mentioned, these devices, we're addicted to everything. And there's doom and gloom in the world. We're addicted to our phones, we're addicted to, whatever substances, whether it's, fast food to worse. Um, and, the more distracted and by design, depressed and doom and gloom we are, it's prevents you from thinking expansively. Like, you have to be calm to think expansively, but it also, if you're distracted and addicted, your internal intuition is really hard. Like, how much of pe like, listening to that gut and that internal, navigator becomes really hard with all these things compounded. So, whatever methodologies works personally, I think getting more in touch with that internal navigation system and quiet
Right.
yourself in a place where you can think expansively to really get clear on, what you want, and you begin to, like, and I've been doing this, for about 2 years, been trying to get more in touch with my internal navigation. It becomes an embodied experience where you feel what's right, or you feel what's right or not. And I think, I know personally I was so out of touch with that. I'm still, working on that myself too.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had to learn to be an embodied intelligence. I
Mm.
think that in my early 20s, I was imagining myself as a little brain on a stick figure body, and the purpose of the body was just to move my brain around.
It sounds like Brain from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Ah, absolutely. That's right. Yeah. In fact, the things that I prize most about my brain are the things that come, probably most evolutionarily recently. um, the symbolic manipulation, thinking words, and there's a whole bunch of gray and white matter that's ready to serve me. It's just not. It's just pre-verbal, right? So So you can only put it to use if you actually learn to listen to your intuition.
Yeah.
It's there. It wants to be helpful.
That's what they're designed to do. They're
Yes.
goal-seeking devices or, organs.
Yeah. Yeah. You reminded me of an old Greek idea that I came to through the Stoics of the real meaning of being cosmopolitan. um, you're a member of polis of the citizenry of the cosmos, and I do think that the pursuit of not just a good life but being good is about an evaluation of yourself as an individual with local commitments, to your family, friends, and then to, possibly your city state in the old Greek sense. But ultimately, like what are your responsibilities as a citizen of the cosmos is also something that it's almost like a sanity check against.
Yeah, no, I love that, and, currently, there's so much going on, and, there's this term called hypernormalization where, things that are not normal, like 24/7 doom and gloom news and, everything that we're seeing as somehow becoming normal, but it's not, but to keep going, it's called hypernormalization, and, it's, that's something, compounding the AI, discussions that we're having, and all of that. But, there's, I think your question is like, what does it mean to be a good person more or less, or my thoughts on that? I
Right.
I I think, there's so much hyper individualism, specifically in the United States. And one thing that you said is, community. And in this moment in time, I really think getting more in touch with community, like
Mm,
in person community, and like getting to know your neighbors or building your local community is so, so important because, especially more that the online is blurring and you can't tell what's real from not real. What is reality? It's like you and me, we're pixelated now, but this is happening at the same time, and we can agree what reality is. And, with all the confusion online, it's you still can't, replicate that human presence and, feel the energy of people around you, and that. And so I think, instead of going so much inward, like, "How can I be a better person?" Be part of a community and say, "How can I
right.
contribute to the community?" And then that's a flywheel that, is or not self-fulfilling, but it's self-fulfilling where you're overflowing in a community thing. And I think that will solve so many things from the loneliness, what's real or what's not real if you're in person with someone, "You're real, I'm not bot, we're here together," type of thing.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to float a theory by you as a fellow entrepreneur. I think a key success factor in what you're describing is the self-tuning.
Mhm.
I actually think it's hard to be really helpful, because your ideas about how to be helpful are probably wrong. Like if it was very easy to be helpful, then like every startup would succeed. Like no one would start a product or service business that people didn't want, right? Um, and the reason why we talk about pivot so much is because actually your first idea about like what people want is probably wrong. And you need to iterate a bunch to like find the actual thing that people actually really really need. And if you don't come into contact with the reality, if it's all intermediated through a screen, you can sit there thinking you're a wonderful, generous person because you buy the right biodegradable soap and you say all the right things online. But that's not what people need. You have to like come into contact with the reality, which is probably right there in your local community to get tuned to learn the difference between good intentions and actually delivered good actions. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think some of the best products are, when people solve their own needs, and that's, like, the authentic, beginning. But, of course, listening. And, I mean, I've been a social media marketing expert for the first big chapter of my career, and listening tools, all of those, the business intelligence is all really great. But I always take it with a grain of salt because what can humans do but AI not do?
Right.
Read between the lines,
Yeah, right.
and
Yeah.
what does it mean? And often what people say online doesn't match their actual behavior, so you have to track what they say to their online behavior. But, there's also the missing element of the online lives we assume that they, one-to-one mirror our offline lives as well, and there's a big gap, and this is why the Amazons and all these people wanna get more into our homes and, like, monitor and, if your popcorn's out, they'll automatically rebuy you popcorn, that's a potential, future.
There's something about practical AI augmentation
Mm,
that captures what you're putting your finger on, like what the humans do still exclusively well,
yeah.
coupled with what AI can accelerate. I think you and I are both members of the AI clone club where we've tried to build a little, replica. And I don't know about you. I found this less useful than I anticipated. Whereas um augmentation use cases, it's like if a you can tell the difference between a wise practice creative person driving a generative AI model versus um v- versus the average, right? Like um the 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 more creative you are in actually driving the model, the better the results are, right? Like this points at something that's hard, to your point, to measure, but is a real difference, and therefore seems to be a real skill that some people are acquiring and others are not. What have you observed as like the success factors that mean, ooh, like this is a killer AI plus human combo versus this is just an over optimization that's trying to sell more popcorn?
Yeah. Um, Thank you. Yeah, so when social media at its best, because I think everyone has a love-hate relationship, it reinforces our offline lives and relationships. Like, I can lightly be connected to my high school friends, not see them for years, and then, like, still know about each other's lives. And I think with AI, centering human flourishing, if you center that, then all the other decisions are different. If you center profits and a quick buck, the decisions, along that are completely different. And I have my responsible AI, and then I have my reckless AI, and character AI, I call them out all the time, is reckless AI. They had, it's, a chatbot where people can, talk with characters, and, they've since changed a little bit, but when it was 2 Google founders came over, it's like, "This is not medical. We can make mistakes." After 20 years of social media, to see the harm that's come from social media, to take that stance is horrific. And they had a young kid, 14 years old, who got, disenfranchised and lost touch with reality, and in a relationship with this, Danny Targaryen app or little bot, and asked at one point, "Do you want me to come home to you?" The character never cut out a character or did suicide, services hotline, and the kid went to his father, got his father's or went to and got his father's gun and ended up taking his life. And this is reckless AI, and if you don't have good intentions, and if you're not centering what's best for humans and centering a quick buck for this gold rush. And character AI raised some 160, 170 $1 million to build these AI chatbots. They're very dangerous, especially for kids who don't understand what's real and what's not real, and especially developing the most intimate of relationships. Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin said this. If social media is a race to the amygdala of anger, then AI is a race to intimacy. And if you're treating a chatbot like your best friend and sharing your biggest, deepest secrets, it's really hard for a kid to remember that this is not a human. So that's something that, I really always have to call out the harms because it's very dangerous, especially for kids, to be engaging in these AI chatbots, especially without parents understanding the real risk and what's going on, thinking that they're just playing, on social media. That said, to your point, there is so much benefit to the augmentation if it's done right with intentionality, centering humans, and human well-being, which, I can't name too many that are doing a great job of actually centering, human well-being. I think, this is not a different category, but, there's, what is it? Is it not Bumble? One of the date Hinge, I think one of the dating apps is like, "Our goal is for you to delete us," you know? And how much of tech is like to minimize tech in our lives. Everything is like wanting more, more and more and more. But the augmentation, I mean, I use ChatGPT as, personal development thing too, and almost like recursive learning for myself. My clone, I don't know what yours is very different. It's not that different. I mean, it's similar as Heijen, the original one's Synthesia and Colossian. But I just feed it scripts, so it's my words, and then it just performs and makes video files. So it's not a dynamic one that's based on what I've trained it. But I haven't done this yet, but I do wanna build a custom, bot that's only like a RAG model, and that means for those who don't know RAG, that it's trained basically on your own material and own reference, and it helps minimize the hallucinations and the making up stuff. But I really wanna build a custom bot just based on my own, like, corpus of work and start sparring because 'cause I've interviewed some amazing artists who have done this with their artwork. And then it gets really exciting where you're not sparring with general AI, you're really sparring with yourself.
With yourself. Yeah.
And I listened to some of your shows and, we have this human recency memory problem of,
Yes.
what we can do. And to have you, copied more or less and have access to all of that work, that's where I think it gets really exciting, as at least from my perspective.
I'm excited about this too. I think that almost anyone can benefit from that level of human memory augmentation because it's just you with better recall. And getting into that in practice, what I found, going back to your observation about um, AIs as failed simulacra, the the trick is to give people the ability to um, look up anything.
Mm.
Um, the our memories are much richer than your AI clone will be able to service. But recall is not deterministic. So, so the wonder of this augmentation is that basically all you're doing is you're making more of your memory searchable. You only need to find one thread to pull on, and then your brain's like, "Oh, I remember that thread," and here's 100 more related things. Um, and so you literally get this better result of it's like human plus computer equals something more wondrous.
Yeah, and and I love that example 'cause, what I think, I go down lots of rants and rabbit holes, but, what I said was social media at its best supports offline relationships. How you just described it, with the immediate recall, that's supporting human memory. Like, that's a great like, it's a gap that we have that AI supports us in our human life. You know, how can AI support that versus, the reframe that so much like, how can, social media is easy, but how can we spend more time getting people to prompt more and spend more time on AI and, that's a different versus how can AI support humans, versus how can we use AI more for everything?
That's right. Yeah. I've been thinking that if you think about recommendation algorithms as themselves being a sort of, um, artificial intelligence, the good recommendation algorithms are themselves actually models. They're complicated models, trying to predict accurately what the next thing to show you is so that you, in essence, don't leave, right? So everything about that is actually pretty awesome until the very end, where it turns out that the model's optimizing for one outcome, which is you not leaving that one particular platform. But I think if we just change that goal, imagine a recommendation algorithm that truly worked for you, whose goal was to guide what you should pay attention to next, not for the purpose of maximizing, d- daily active users, but to maximize your satisfaction with life. What should you pay attention to next? Where should you switch from here? It doesn't have to be to the next TikTok video. Maybe it's to a little bit of meditation. Maybe it's to your breath. Maybe it's to your mom.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, it's time spent, quality of time over, the quantity of all the content, and I know people who watch content in 2x, 3x speed, and it's like we still have the same hours and, we're just taking all this more in. But, to respond more directly about the goal of the algorithms, to take a step back from that, the algorithms are problematic in and of themselves, uh, because, at least on the social media side, they're black boxes. There's no transparency, and we're told they're so complicated that none of us will ever be able to understand. It's like we put a rocket on the moon. Surely we can understand a black box that influences how many users does Facebook have? There's 8 billion people on the planet and like 5.45, million or billion online.
More than, yeah.
So I think, taking a step back, having transparency for the algorithms, and then understanding how they work. And one of the more interesting things that I've heard on this conversation, actually has been, from Jack Dorsey, the CEO of Twitter, how he, and this is where my technical language gets or I need to do a little bit more reading up, but the Fediverse, where you take your data with you where you go. But he had some really interesting things to say about not only, to your point, where your attention goes, maybe meditation over, addictive whatever, spiraling down on the internet rabbit hole of something. But to actually have where you can personalize your own algorithms and decide, instead of the platform being like, "Oh, people need more meditation, so let's do it that way," to actually let the user, customize algorithms and have
Right.
more control over the algorithm itself, and I thought that was really interesting. So he's an interesting one to follow on the conversation right now.
Yeah, I think so too. I would like to live in a world with a marketplace of algorithms so that one could be more intentional about its adoption. I think it took years to figure out like that the hypernormalization of attention recommendation algorithms had accidentally created an evolutionary landscape that selected for triggering the amygdala, right?
Mm.
Like um, and I think it's a good pro-survival aspect of humans. I think maybe I'll take issue with Tristan. It's not necessarily about triggering anger, it's about triggering fear. Because the we've all evolved to notice threats and then share information about threats with our friends or tribe, because that would enable us to all like successfully avoid, those problems. And what that means is that the best way to trigger your attention is to give you a new thing to fear.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. Fear, anger, all those low vibrational emotions. Yeah, but we live in a lot of fear right now.
Right, right. But we got to this place with I think, with a bunch of wonderful energy about you democratizing the press, right? This is going to be really great. We're going to, knock down a whole bunch of gatekeepers, and this is going to be incredibly individually empowering. And to a certain extent, that did happen. Um, uh, these anti patterns took a while to reveal themselves, which suggests that might be like we might be living in a state of ignorance right now, where we're creating a new evolutionary landscape that's going to select for some kind of unintended consequences.
Yeah, I mean, with Facebook, slash Meta, you know, they I there's a lot of nuance and, I don't think Mark Zuckerberg is a bad person by any means, but we've all gotten caught up in what doesn't serve us in the information age. And his mission to connect the world, I think is amazing. When I was born, which was only 41 years ago, there were only 1,000 computers connected to the internet. And now, 5.4 or 5 billion people. So I mean, this is I think we get so caught up in day to day, like, we are living in a magical time despite all the doom and gloom, where never before in human history have we been connected globally as a world in the way that we are interconnected right now in this moment in time, and can tap in to the collective, well, what been scraped or offered over to AI, tap into the collective, information that's been published. So I think that's really exciting, but I don't think you can have a mission to be for profit in what he wants to do and have it be aligned, of just serving shareholders to get more and more money, out of users' data and be for the well-being of users. Because time and time again, we have seen simple, changes to the algorithm. Like, one instance is, like, if a post gets shared, like, 4 or 5 times, it's probably going viral and it probably has misinformation, da, 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 da. You could turn that off where you could not share a piece of content, more than twice as a throttle. Nope, because it takes users off the platform, less time and less sharing. So, it's one thing to have intentionality, especially when we're thinking, about more corporate structures. What's PR speak and marketing speak and
Right.
actually built into the fabric of their operations. And I think, we're seeing the consequences of great marketing speak, not actually, part of the fabric of their businesses that center well-being.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, th- this kind of dysfunction is often ascribed to, bad incentive design. Though I've often wondered if it's actually um, the a consequence of the difficulty of, let's call it, embodied wisdom in an organization. Like the company that makes the most money long term is actually a wise company that serves people, right? So if we all commit societal suicide, then the profitability of your company doesn't matter. So on like some time scale, actually being generous is the way to make the most money. But it's really hard to make an organization act with that kind of infinite wisdom and compassion. Um, so, eh, like I don't know if removing the profit motive is like enough to change that outcome. There are plenty of unwise nonprofits as well. Um, is is there instead some sort of um, tension between short-term um, outcome optimization and long-term outcome optimization, and we haven't found the right way to get big organizations shifted towards the long time scale.
Yeah, and this is one thing I've said, before on stage. Um, the what and I know some of my ideas are a little bit more, I wouldn't say
Go
naive,
for it.
but not they're within reach, I would say, but it sounds further, given where the state of the world is. Um, uh but we are in this race and we think in quarters. Um, I would really love to see a reframe to a garden and nurturing and really a long time horizon from an idea coming to fruition, starting with our kids' dreams. And another reckless AI company is Roblox that exploits kids instead of nurturing them in their dreams. Um, and I learned this at Miami Art Basel's Filmgate Immersive Festival that a lot of indigenous tribes and communities, they live in the present, but also are very future looking too. And when they make decisions that are really big, that affect their entire community, they think 7 generations out about the impact of their decisions. And our corporations think in quarters and profits. And that's a very different, decision making framework. Shareholders to your grandkids 7 generations out, that reframe, you make different decisions. But there are there are businesses like Patagonia that I think are gold standards of like taking care of your customers and the planet. Like you know, uh, the information they had just so binary, ones and zeros. It's either this or that. It's like you can make money and be a good global citizen as well. Those two can coexist. Uh, you know, but there's other great examples of mutual aid organizations. Here in Cincinnati, I've recently learned this. We actually have the most employee-owned businesses out of the entire country. Um, and that's like a different model too, where everyone gets a piece of the pie and it's more, win-win for everyone involved and all stakeholders. And I think that's where we're going to see, the biggest shift is when you really, really are. There's B Corps, there's the triple bottom line, but we've got to think beyond the shareholders because it's not working to just help the shareholders. Someone prove me wrong, but I've yet to be convinced.
Yeah, there's also sort of an interesting dislocation of agency and decision making where if you think about global finance markets as a kind of um, distributed computer trying to figure out like what's valuable and what's not, the when your organization goes public, you're sort of putting, to a certain extent, the fate of your company um, in the hands of this global computer.
Mhm.
Um, and um, patently, this is awesome in many, many cases because the global computer has um, the more information and less arrogance than any individual. But the um, but sometimes essentially the wisdom of the crowds is wrong, right? So if you are maybe at a certain percentile of wisdom and generosity, then you can steer your ship towards a much greater outcome than the public markets ever could. And I think Patagonia is like an awesome example of that. Yeah. So um, how do we as a society make it easier and more attractive to create more of those? I think that'd be a
Yeah.
future I'd like to live
Me
in.
too. Me I mean, and it's honestly one that we have to explore. There's not enough resources. I have a master's in marketing, and I remember the very first, marketing course I ever took, which was at Xavier University as a freshman here in Cincinnati, and my professor, opened up with the class, for marketing that's like, if everyone in the world consumed as much as Americans consumed, we would actually need, like, 3 or 4 more planet Earths, just for the raw resources to do it. So, and I just saw a clip the other day on Instagram with, like, Star Trek. It was like, "In the future, we're post-materialism because we don't need that anymore."
Right.
Um, and, I love all my things as much as anyone else, but, I think with the information age and what I'm calling the imagination, it's not just me, I didn't come up with the idea, the imagination age, that we really are on the precipice for tons of change and what Amy Webb calls the great generation T, everyone alive. It's not just AI, it's biotech, AI, and the Internet of Connected Things for this new general technology that's gonna impact everything. And with all this, uncertainty and chaos and moving fast, it's also an opportunity to insert new ideas. And I think we need some new ideas to like re-envision what's possible. And one thing I like about the imagination age, there's so few positive frameworks. Like we have sci-fi, but so many of their stories are more dystopian. Like what's a positive AI, movie or something the best? You have Afrofuturism, indigenous futurism, solar punk, which is, the opposite of cyberpunk. There's probably a few more I haven't uncovered. And then, the imagination age could be just a new positive framework to have conversations like this and envisioning human flourishing, um, and entrepreneurship, coexisting in a beautiful way. Or Michael, I said this on stage at South by, it might be more than just a framework for if you go to Wikipedia or future history books where we left the Industrial Revolution to the information age and are really entering the imagination age. It's like, it might be the whole new era, and that because it's not defined or owned by anyone, that we could collectively, and not Sam Altman and his PR people, define this new era, that we could collectively define what we want an imagination age, and I get really excited about that.
Me too. I think that ideas like this and visions of the future are literally the intellectual scaffolding for the builders of the future.
Mhm.
And so a good future starts in the imagination.
And I will say, um, the imagination, but you sound like a very creative person just from our conversation, but a lot of people and as a creative person trying to share ideas, lack the ability to see or imagine, and so many people need to be shown, "What do you mean by responsible AI or the imagination age?" And I think while I completely agree it all starts in our imagination, those who can actually see and envision, it's upon us to, like, show and get the stories and help change the conversation, uh, or at least have more conversations like this. Because a lot of people, when they're distracted and in survival mode, you say things, it sounds crazy to some people who are living, paycheck to paycheck and stressed out all day, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think creativity unlocks creativity. Good ideas tend to be next to each other. The Um, and when you show people something is possible that they didn't previously know was possible, then you're kind of giving them a ladder to build on top of
Mhm.
that new set of the adjacent possible.
Yeah, and one example on that point is the guy who broke the 4-minute mile. It was, like, thought to be impossible, and then, I used to have this memorized, but then within, like, 4 months, another person, and within a year, 4 or 6 people, so, yeah, we need that.
Yes, those are the breakthroughs that matter.
Yeah.
Helen, where do listeners find out more about you?
The best place is creativitysquared.com. You can check out we have 75 episodes and you can subscribe, and I'm relaunching the season, and I'm only gonna be are primarily doing imagination age concepts this season, and then I'll pick up interviews next season, and then I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram too the most.
All right. Oh, I'm looking forward to the next season. That sounds fantastic.
Thank you. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, so thank you so much for having me on, Michael.
Same. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.